Hello. This time I thought I'd make a video telling you about my musical journey, uh, how my taste in music has developed over the years. The first song that I can recall liking, I must have been around 3 years old. I heard this song on the radio. I don't know if it was played many times or not, but it was played enough for me to learn to recognize the song. And at that point, it was just that song. I didn't think that there should be such things as the performer and title of the song. So it took me many years until I found out who the performer was and what the song title was. The band was called The Shadows. Obviously, at that time, I didn't have this record uh, because we didn't have a record player. We didn't have any kind of record player at the time. We only had the radio. But for some reason, at first I learned the song title wrong. I thought it was called The Ghost Riders in the Sky. But sometime later, I learned it basically by accident, that it wasn't that. It was actually called, let's see if you can see it, Apache. Then a couple of years later, we got a reel-to-reel tape machine, and which had Elvis music on it. And I started listening to Elvis, and I basically liked all of his music from 50s to 70s. That much what we had. I really don't know how much stuff we had, but I'm guessing that it wasn't really much. But at that point, it wasn't anything serious. I just liked it, and that's that. Until in Christmas '77, we went to visit my uncle, who was a big Elvis fan, and he kept playing Elvis while we were there. And he gave us a lot of his music. So at that time, I really became a big fan of his music. I would say that although I liked all of his music, I would say that this was my favorite period. This is his early 60s studio recordings. Like I said, I did like everything, but I would say that this was my favorite period. That lasted for couple of years until in summer of 1980 we went to visit our relatives, and a cousin of mine played me a cassette, and all that I can say is that it sounded very different to anything else that I had heard before. So when we came back home, I asked my mom to give me money so that I could go and buy my first record, and this one was it. In Christmas of 1980, I got my second record, which was this one. And summer of '81, I got my third record, which was this one. Kind of easy to say which was my favorite band at the time. That lasted for about 2 years, after which I had about a year and a half when I didn't listen to music at all. And then in Christmas of '83, two of my friends got Kiss records as their Christmas presents, and I quickly started listening to those and fell in love with Kiss. But it actually took a long time before I was able to buy my first album. I bought my first Kiss record in September of 1984, and it was this one, Rock and Roll Over. But I call this one, Creatures of the Night, my first Kiss album, because my younger brother had got there before me, and he bought this one a month before me. But I call this as my first album because I bought this from him many years ago. Before I had bought that first album, I had already heard an album that was making a big difference to me, because before that I only intended to listen to Kiss music, nothing else, no other hard rock bands, just Kiss. So when I heard this one, Iron Maiden, The Number of the Beast. I immediately fell in love with this. This is such a fantastic album that I didn't hesitate starting getting Iron Maiden albums at all. And this one opened up the doors to other heavy and hard rock bands. Uh, for about the next 2 years, basically I listened to only to heavy and hard rock bands. Well, Elvis being the exception. But in '86, I heard a song called "So Far Away" by Dire Straits, which I thought that now that's an excellent song. So I went and bought this one, "Brothers in Arms" by Dire Straits. Now this was such a good album that there was no way to deny the excellent quality in this, and this became a hugely important record to me because this opened up a whole new world to me in music. Because basically before this there had only been Elvis, rock and roll, rockabilly, and then hard rock, and now this opened up a whole new world to me. I was actually quite ashamed to be owning this, so much so that I actually held this apart from the rest of my records. I held this in a corner. But anyway, it was a great record, and that was the start. Also in '86, a friend of mine lent me a double album which included two of Hanoi Rock's albums, and they were Bangkok Shocks, Saigon Shakes, and Oriental Beat. Uh, these were also a hugely important records to me in the sense that these opened up my mind for Finnish music. I hadn't listened to Finnish music basically at all before these. So these were the start for me as far as the Finnish music goes. In the years of '85, '86, '87, there had been several records released by my favorite hard rock bands that I was disappointed in them. It wasn't that I didn't like them, I just felt like those had been like a step in the wrong direction. I didn't think that all of them had been disappointments, but most of them had been disappointments to me. So by '87, when this one was released, this is a 12-inch single by Dio, I Could Have Been a Dreamer. I really felt that this was a big disappointment to me. This was like standing water. I felt that this was stuff that had been done before with better results. And this was really like where I stopped listening to hard rock music. I felt that I had already started to getting know other types of music, so I felt like this was a stop where I would move away from hard rock, stop listening to it. And actually, this was so much so that I haven't, even today, I still haven't heard this album, this Dream Evil. I did buy the follow-up single to this one, which I actually liked the B-side, Overlove, I believe the B-side is. I really think that that's an excellent song, but I've never bought the Dream Evil to this day. So the '87 was like the breakup year for me as far as hard rock goes, but it wasn't a total breakup because I still followed several of the bands that I had been listening to at that time. Basically, I stopped buying everybody's hard rock records at some point, but at that point I still continue to follow several of them. But '87 was the cut-up year in the sense that those bands who released their first records after 1987, I didn't follow them anymore. I stopped buying those records. But there was an exception, and this one was Kingdom Come. This one was released in 1988, so this one I did buy. and I did finally buy this one too, Badlands, which was released in 1989, but I bought this one in somewhere around 2008. So it has taken me 20 years to get 1 year forward. Of course, there are things that it's kind of difficult to say what is hard rock and what is not. So I do have records that could be counted as hard rock. For example, this one. So it's up to each individual to decide whether this is hard rock or not. Then I have to go back a bit because in '86 I got my first real job, and I met there two guys who were big '60s music enthusiasts, and they started introducing me to '60s bands. So I got to know through them Rolling Stones, Beatles, Kings, and Hollies. Cream was possibly one of them, and there might have been even more, but those four are the ones that I remember for sure. Then the next big step came in 1988, but I will get back to that one in the next part. Thanks. Bye.